The first thing I saw was the man falling face first onto the road. The second thing I saw was someone standing in the dark behind him. This happened about 2 months ago in a major city in Romania. I live in a quiet residential area, the kind of neighborhood where people walk their dogs at night, park expensive cars outside, and usually don't think twice about going to the corner store after dark. It isn't the kind of place where you expect anything serious to happen. That's probably why I wasn't scared at first. I was just confused. It was late in the evening and I had walked to a nearby store to buy cigarettes. On my way back, I decided to order food from one of my favorite takeout places. The restaurant was only 5 minutes away by car and my house was about 10 minutes from the store, so the timing seemed perfect. I placed the order while walking and kept heading home. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. The delivery app said, "Your driver has picked up your order." I was already close to my house by then, so instead of going straight inside, I decided to stay outside and smoked while I waited. The street was quiet, not just quiet in the normal nighttime way, but completely still. No cars passing, no people talking, no footsteps, just the low hum of the city somewhere far away. I had smoked about half my cigarette when I noticed a man at the far end of the street. At first, I barely paid attention to him. He was just a dark figure under the streetlights, walking slowly in my direction. But then I noticed the way he was moving. Something about it looked wrong. His steps were uneven, almost exaggerated, like he was either drunk or injured. He swayed a little from side to side, then stopped, took 2 more steps, and suddenly collapsed onto the road. He didn't put his hands out to break the fall. He just dropped. For a second I froze. Then I looked around, expecting someone else to react, but there was nobody. No one on the sidewalk, no cars coming down the street, no lights turning on in the nearby buildings. The man didn't move. My first thought was that he had fainted or maybe had some kind of medical emergency. I threw my cigarette on the ground and started walking toward him. I had only taken a few steps when I saw someone else. Another man had appeared at the same far end of the street. He was standing near a broken streetlight, so most of his body was hidden in shadow, but I could see enough to know he was facing me, and I could see something in his right hand. I stopped walking. The man on the ground was still motionless. The second man didn't go to help him. He didn't look surprised. He didn't call out to him. He didn't even look down. He just stood there, staring at me. That was when the whole situation changed. The air felt colder. The street felt much longer than it had a few seconds before. I looked back toward my house. It was close, but not close enough to feel safe. Then I checked the road behind me, hoping to see the delivery driver turning the corner. There was nothing. No headlights, no scooter, no witness. When I looked back, the second man was still staring. He was average height, maybe around 175. He had long hair, blue jeans, and a red jacket. He was also wearing a surgical mask, which made it impossible to read his expression. For what felt like minutes, neither of us moved. Then he started walking toward me, slowly, not rushing, not hiding, just walking straight toward me with his eyes fixed on mine. That was enough for me. I turned around and started walking back toward my house. I tried not to run at first because some stupid part of my brain thought that if I ran, I would make it real, but after a few seconds I heard his footsteps change behind me. He was speeding up. I looked over my shoulder. He was much closer now, close enough that I could finally see the object in his hand. It looked like a short metal pipe or maybe a heavy baton. I didn't wait to find out. I ran. The sound of his footsteps got louder behind me, hard and fast against the pavement. I remember my hands going numb and my keys feeling impossible to hold. By the time I reached the front door of my house, I was shaking so badly that I dropped them once before I could get the key into the lock. I kept expecting to feel a hand grab the back of my jacket or something hit me in the head. Somehow, I got the door open. I slipped inside, slammed it shut behind me, and locked it. Then I ran straight to my father. I could barely explain what had happened. I just kept telling him that there was a man outside, that another man had collapsed in the street, and I thought they were trying to attack me. My father didn't waste time asking questions. He grabbed his jacket and came outside with me. But when we got back to the spot, both men were gone. Not just the man with the object, the man who had collapsed was gone too. There was no one lying in the road, no one walking away, no blood, no dropped phone, nothing. That's when I remembered something. One of my friends lived in the house right in front of the spot where the man had collapsed. He was a film student, and for a second I actually hoped that maybe this had all been some kind of scene he was shooting. Maybe the man falling, the second man appearing, the whole thing. Maybe it was part of a short film or some weird project. So I called him. When he picked up, I asked him if he had been filming outside or if he had seen anything strange from his window. He sounded confused. He told me he hadn't recorded anything that night, and he hadn't seen anything either. For days afterward, I kept thinking about what happened. Maybe the man on the ground was really hurt, and the second man had done something to him, but that doesn't explain why they both disappeared so quickly. The theory that scares me the most is that the collapsed man was never hurt at all. Maybe he was bait. Maybe he fell on purpose, hoping I would get close enough to help him, and maybe the man in the red jacket was waiting for exactly that. A few times after the incident, I passed by that same street again, around the same time I had first seen them. I don't know what I expected. Part of me thought I would see the man in the red jacket standing under that broken streetlight again. Part of me thought I would see someone lying in the road, but I never did. They never came back.
There is a particular feeling you get when you enter an abandoned building. It isn't just fear. It's the smell of damp concrete, stale smoke, and rooms that haven't seen fresh air in years. It's the broken glass and used needles scattered across the floor. The belongings left behind by people who once worked or lived there. And then there's the feeling that no matter how carefully you look around, someone is always standing just beyond the reach of your flashlight. This happened sometime during the summer of 2016. A few friends and I decided to explore an abandoned factory on the outskirts of a major city in Romania. We were teenagers at the time, just a group of idiots looking for something exciting to do. We had heard about the factory before. It had supposedly been abandoned sometime after the fall of communism. Nobody seemed to know exactly what had been produced there, but the property had been empty for decades. People occasionally went there to drink, spray graffiti, or sleep inside. We knew it probably wasn't safe. That was part of the appeal. The factory was surrounded by a crumbling brick wall. We found a section low enough to climb over and pulled ourselves into the overgrown property one by one. The moment my feet touched the ground on the other side, I felt uneasy. Nature had swallowed most of the place. Tall grass pushed through the cracks in the pavement. Vines climbed up the walls, small trees had grown through the parts of concrete, and weeds covered what had once been rows between the buildings. It was strange to imagine that a few decades earlier, hundreds of people might have crossed that same yard every day. They would have worked there, complained about their jobs, made friends, argued, laughed, lived normal lives. Now it was silent. Everything they had built was slowly collapsing into the ground. All of us felt nervous, but none of us wanted to admit it. Instead, we challenged each other to stay as long as possible. The last person to leave would get a case of beer paid for by everyone else. Naturally, that meant none of us wanted to be the first one to bend down. We spent the first part of the afternoon exploring the outside of the factory. As long as we were standing in the sunlight, it almost felt fun. There were broken bottles everywhere, hundreds of them in some areas. Most were old, dirty, and partially buried in the grass. We started wondering whether the factory had once been some kind of distillery or bottling plant. Eventually, we gave ourselves a mission. We were going to find one completely intact bottle and take it home as a souvenir. That stupid little goal kept us moving closer to the main building. The entrance was a large opening where a set of metal doors had once been. The doors gone now, leaving only rusted hinges and the black space beyond them. The closer we got, the stronger the feeling became that we shouldn't go inside. None of us said it out loud. We just stood there, staring into the darkness. Eventually one of us called into the building. "Is anyone in there?" There was no answer. We called out again, louder this time. Still, nothing. I think all of us secretly hoped someone would respond. It would have given us an excuse to leave without losing the challenge, but the factory remained silent. So we turned on the flashlights on our phones and entered. The light disappeared only a few meters ahead of us. Most of the windows had been boarded up or shattered, and only thin strips of sunlight came through the cracks in the walls and ceiling. The beams from our phones revealed the floor one section at a time. Broken glass, used needles and syringes, discarded condoms, pieces of clothing, animal bones, and the remains of small carcasses. There were also broken dolls scattered between the debris. Some were missing their heads or limbs. Others were so covered in dirt that they had almost blended into the floor. The place had clearly been used by homeless people, drug users, and anyone else who needed somewhere hidden from the city. Dark stains covered parts of the walls. Beneath them, we could just make out the remains of an old mural, though most of it had faded beyond recognition. At first, every sound made us stop. A bottle shifting beneath someone's shoe, water dripping somewhere in the building, a piece of metal creaking above us. But after a while, we became comfortable. We started joking about everything we found. One of us pointed at a broken chair and said it had belonged to the factory's laziest worker. Another doorway supposedly led to a secret underground tunnel. An old piece of machinery became a machine that manufactured broken glass. The jokes made the place feel less dangerous. Eventually, we stopped thinking about the darkness and became absorbed in exploring. We went from room to room, searching shelves, opening rusted cabinets, and checking piles of debris for an intact bottle. We never found one. What we did find was that time had passed much faster than any of us realized. By the time we checked our phones again, it was already dark outside. Our batteries were running low, and so was our confidence. The weak light from our phones no longer felt comforting. It only showed us how much darkness surrounded us. We finally agreed that the challenge was over. Nobody had won, nobody had lost. We just wanted to live. Then we heard the footsteps. They came from somewhere deeper inside the building. Slow at first, one step, then another. They were too heavy to be an animal, and they didn't belong to any of us. We immediately turned toward the sound. Nothing appeared in our lights. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, we all stood completely still. Then they started again, closer this time. We assumed someone else was inside the factory, maybe homeless people, maybe drug users. Whoever it was, we doubted they would be happy to find a group of teenagers wandering through their shelter. We switched off our flashlights. The darkness was immediate, complete. I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. We placed our hands against the walls and we began moving towards what we thought was the exit. Nobody spoke. We tried to step carefully, but broken glass cracked beneath our shoes. Every sound echoed through the empty rooms. Soon, I couldn't tell which footsteps belonged to us. There were too many. My heartbeat was pounding so loudly that I could hear it in my ears. Then came the whispering. It was somewhere behind us. Too quiet to understand, but close enough that all of us heard it. One voice at first, then what sounded like another. We stopped trying to be quiet. All of us started running. Our phone lights came back on as we stumbled through the building, but the beams shook so badly that they were almost useless. I remember slamming into a doorway. Someone behind me tripped over a piece of metal. The footsteps followed us through the factory, mixing with our own, until it sounded like far more people were running than the few of us who had entered. None of us looked back. We saw an opening ahead and ran toward it. The moment we reached outside, the cold night air hit us. We didn't stop at the wall. We climbed over it as quickly as we could, and kept running until the factory was far behind us. Only then we did stop to catch our breath. We tried to convince ourselves that homeless people had been inside. That was the most reasonable explanation, but none of us had seen anyone, and whoever had been following us never came outside. The next day, we searched for information about the factory. Most of what we found was made up of rumors and stories posted online. Some people claimed that workers had died there before the building closed. Others said people had taken their own lives inside during and after the unrest surrounding the fall of communism. We couldn't prove that any of it was true, but we couldn't explain the footsteps, or the whispering. We never went near the factory again, and we never will.
This happened during summer break in a fairly big city in western Romania. My hometown is known for a lot of things, but one of the strangest is the forest on the edge of the city. Depending on who you ask, it's either just an old forest with a creepy reputation or one of the most haunted places in the country. As kids, we all heard stories about it, people getting lost, strange lights appearing between the trees, voices calling from places where no one was standing. But even though we lived close to it, my friends and I had never actually gone inside. That changed one hot afternoon during summer break. I was bored at home, so I messaged two of my friends, Alex and Vlad, and asked if they wanted to bike around the city for a while. They agreed almost immediately. We met in the city center and bought some snacks and drinks. Because we were dumb teenagers who thought we were cooler than we actually were, we also bought cigarettes and a few beers. At first, there was no plan. We were just riding around, joking, wasting time, and trying to make the day feel more interesting than it was. Then, for some reason, one of us mentioned the forest. I don't even remember who said it first, but once the idea was out there, none of us wanted to be the one to say no. So we headed towards it. It was late afternoon, around 5 o'clock, and the city was busy as usual. Cars were passing, people were walking around, and everything felt normal. But the closer we got to the forest, the quieter it became. By the time we reached the street leading to the entrance, it felt like the entire city had disappeared behind us. No cars, no people, just the three of us on our bikes and the sound of birds somewhere inside the trees. We stopped at the entrance and got off our bikes. For a moment, none of us said anything. The forest didn't look terrifying, not at first. The sun was still shining through the branches, the grass was green, and a warm breeze moved through the leaves. If anything, it looked peaceful. That made the old warning board near the entrance seem even more ridiculous. It was nailed to a tree, weathered and faded, but we could still read most of it. Do not leave the marked path, do not enter after dark. There were other warnings too, the kind of things that sounds dramatic when you're 16 and standing with your friends at the edge of a supposedly haunted forest. Alex laughed first, he called it bull. Then Vlad laughed too. Once they did, I laughed with them. We stood there smoking for a few minutes, making jokes about ghosts and missing tourists, acting like none of us were even slightly nervous. Then we got back on our bikes and rode in. At the beginning, it was actually nice. The path was narrow but easy to follow. Small rocks cracked beneath our tires. The sun came through the branches in golden lines and birds were singing above us. It felt less like a haunted forest and more like a place people had exaggerated stories about. But after maybe 5 minutes, something changed. It was subtle at first. The birds stopped, not slowly, not one by one. They just stopped. Then the wind died down and the leaves stopped moving. A minute later, the forest looked different. The grass wasn't bright green anymore. It had turned into a dull, brownish color, as though it had dried out in patches. The trees seemed closer together than before, and the sunlight that had been shining through the branches was fading much faster than it should have. I checked my phone. I remember thinking the time didn't make sense. It felt like we had only been riding for a few minutes, but somehow the afternoon already felt much later. None of us said anything about it at first. I think we all noticed it, but nobody wanted to be the first to admit that the place felt wrong. So we kept going. A little deeper into the forest, I suddenly heard Alex call my name. Christy. It came from my right side, clear as day. I slowed down and looked over at him. What? Alex looked confused. What do you mean, what? You called my name? He shook his head. No, I didn't. I looked at Vlad, expecting him to laugh or admit that one of them was messing with me, but Vlad just stared at us. I didn't hear anything, he said. I thought Alex was playing some stupid prank, so I told him to stop, but he looked genuinely annoyed. I swear I didn't say anything. Vlad told us both to forget about it and keep moving, so we did. I tried to convince myself that I misheard something. A few minutes later, the path opened into a small clearing. It was actually beautiful. There was an old wooden camping table there, the kind with two benches attached to it, sitting near the edge of the hill. From that spot, the trees thinned out just enough to give us a view of the city below. It felt strange seeing the city so clearly from a place that suddenly seemed so far away from it. We leaned our bikes against the trees and sat down. I sat on one side of the table. Alex and Vlad sat across from me. We opened our drinks, lit cigarettes, and tried to bring the mood back to normal. For a while, it worked. We talked about school, about the stupid things we had done before summer break started, about the girls we had crushes on, and how we are definitely going to talk to them when the new school year began, even though all three of us knew we probably wouldn't. We laughed for a while. For about an hour, nothing happened. Eventually, the conversation died down. We were all sitting there quietly when Alex suddenly turned towards Vlad. What? Vlad looked at him. What do you mean? You just said my name. Vlad frowned. No, I didn't. Alex looked at me. You heard him, right? I shook my head. I hadn't heard anything. Alex kept insisting that he had heard Vlad's voice say, "Hey Alex," from directly across the table, but I had been looking at Vlad. His mouth hadn't moved. None of us laughed this time. The clearing suddenly felt different. The city was still visible in the distance, but it didn't feel close anymore. It felt like we were looking at it from behind glass. We all agreed that no one should mess around. No fake voices, no jokes, no one trying to scare each other. For a few minutes we sat in silence. Then Vlad suddenly looked at me. His face had gone pale. "Why did you call me?" I stared at him. "I didn't." He leaned back from the table. "I heard you say my name." Alex looked between us. "I didn't hear anything." Neither had I. Vlad insisted that he had heard my voice whisper, "Vlad," from somewhere behind him. Now each of us had heard something, and every time the voice had only been heard by the person it was calling. We stopped talking after that. Vlad took another drag from his cigarette. Alex stared down at the table. I was trying to convince myself that there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe sounds were carrying strangely between the trees. Maybe someone else was nearby. Maybe we were frightening ourselves because of the stories we had heard about the forest. Then I heard my own voice, right beside me, closer than a whisper should have been. "Hey, Christy!" This time all three of us heard it. No one moved for half a second. Then everything happened at once. Vlad knocked his cigarette onto the ground. Alex grabbed his backpack so quickly that one of his bottles rolled off the table. I didn't bother picking up our drinks or cigarettes. We ran to our bikes. I remember hearing the tires slide over the dirt as we turned them around. I remember Alex yelling something, but I don't remember what. I remember pedaling harder than I have ever before, with the path shaking beneath my bike and branches scraping against my arms. None of us looked back, not once. The whole way out, I kept expecting to hear it again. My voice. Alex's voice, Vlad's voice, something behind us calling our names as though it knew exactly how we sounded, but the forest stayed silent. When we finally reached the entrance, the noise of the city came back all at once. Cars in the distance, people talking, a dog barking somewhere nearby, the birds. I don't know why that made it worse, but it did. It felt like the forest had let us leave. We rode straight home after that. No jokes, no laughing, no stopping. For a long time, none of us talked about what happened in that clearing, but I still think about the pattern. First, I heard Alex's voice, and no one else did. Then Alex heard Vlad, then Vlad heard me. Each voice was meant for only one person, until the final one. When my own voice spoke from right beside me, all three of us heard it. Whatever was in that forest wasn't just copying us anymore, it wanted us to know it was there.